Once those temperatures drop and the sun set, we've got a problem.
I was terrified, and I came in hours ago. It was terrifying. I'm from Florida, and I've lived here almost 17 years, and this isn't what I'm used to. B, there were 18-wheelers who were just flying past me, and I came in when it was still slush and rain. Now that is turning into ice. So it's only going to get worse. It's going to get more dangerous. And at some point for some areas, travel is going to be downright impossible. It doesn't even matter if you have a four-wheel drive. If you are on a sheet of ice, the tires cannot get traction. They just spin. And that's when you see those cars that just spin out on the highway. A, they're going too fast, but B, they shouldn't be there in the first place. So I can't stress it enough. Unless you are an essential worker and you absolutely must be on the roads, I promise nothing is worth it. Just not worth it. And driving next to all those big semis, it's scary. It's not fun. Certainly, I don't wish that on anybody. Here's a look at First Alert radar. And I want to point out we're seeing less and less snow. The more pink and green we see, the worse it is. This is what we were forecasting. This is what we were afraid of. And unfortunately, for parts of our viewing area, this will turn into a worst case scenario because all of that beautiful snow is now going to be coated in a layer of ice. And ice is very dangerous. It's very heavy. Not only is it impossible to drive on, but we are going to see power outages. I promise, not only tonight, but through tomorrow, we are going to see power outages. So now's the time to finish preparing, as in charge your devices, download the First Alert Weather app, download the Atlanta News First app. That way you can continue to watch our coverage and get the essential information you need if and when, for some of you, you lose power. Here's a look at First Alert radar, seeing freezing rain. Speaking with the National Weather Service, we're starting to see that transition. What was a beautiful winter wonderland, still looks really pretty outside, is now transitioning to freezing rain across metro Atlanta. Here's why. Look at the temperatures, 33 degrees right now in Atlanta. So what's happening up in the upper levels of the atmosphere, this is falling as snow, then it's hitting a warmer layer above freezing, so it's melting into rain. And as it hits the surface, it's cooler at the surface. So even though it's liquid, not too far up, it's turning back into ice. Or on those branches, it falls as rain, and then it freezes on those branches. So that's what we call freezing rain. And that's what we're going to be seeing because those temperatures are right at that freezing mark. This precipitation continues for the next several hours. We're not going to see a steady, heavy rate for the rest of the afternoon, but we'll continue to see that chance through the afternoon. Then it starts to taper off, but not until 11 p.m. And although the precipitation will be over at 11 p.m., the threat is not. The roads will stay very dangerous through the evening and overnight, and those power outage numbers will continue to increase as the ice on those branches gets thicker and thicker. To add insult to injury, tomorrow will be windy. So those really heavy branches and those limbs that are coated in ice and that didn't finish melting, those will break off as well. So I do think we're going to see those power outage numbers really start to increase, especially as we head into the evening. Let me go back here because I want to show you the potential ice. This is disruptive to significant ice. So wherever you see pink, that's about a quarter of an inch of ice, possibly some locally higher amounts. This is additional ice on top of what we've seen. So as you can see, it's scattered pretty good across the metro area. Right now, the thinking is along I-85, maybe around Hall County near the Gainesville area is where we could see some of the highest ice totals. So wherever we see the highest ice totals, that's where we're going to see the highest power outages for the most part, give or take. So certainly, again, charge those devices, prepare not only for a power outage, but a prolonged power outage. What does that mean? That means it's going to take a lot longer to get your power back on than it normally does because we're going to see more people without power, but also it's harder for those power crews to get to where you are, to get to those power lines, and it's going to take them longer to get from one call to the next. So make sure you are ready if you lose power for a couple days, unfortunately. If you've ever lived through an ice storm, you've lived it, you'll never forget, and hopefully you've taken those precautions so that doesn't happen. Personally, I turn my heat up a little higher in my home just in case we lose power. Here's a look at those the ice impacts with that amount of ice. About a quarter of an inch to half an inch of ice, which is what we are forecasting for much of the metro area. It's when you see tree branches come down, they sag, they break, they're really heavy. I know a quarter of an inch, you go like that, it doesn't look like a lot, but on a tree limb, especially those smaller limbs, that's super, super heavy, especially when it's coating the entire limb. That's when you start to see them sag, then eventually they break. With this much ice, you see some power outages, and it is dangerous travel. Now, some areas are going to see an additional ½ inch of ice. That is significant. That's when you see trees come down. That's when you see widespread power outages. And that's when you see what we call impossible travel. So we go from dangerous travel to impossible travel. It is just impossible to go out on the roads. We're going to continue to monitor the situation. Again, this is going to get a lot worse before it gets better. And we're going to have much more on when we expect this ice to finally melt coming up.